we just start with talking about some like commonalities between these three works, actually, and then we can dig into maybe Parsi a bit, also depending on your interests, and also feel free to. We'll open a bit up for questions in the end, or if somebody has something they want to throw out in the middle, you're also welcome, actually. But I want to start talking a little bit about the movement in your films. And I think first time I got acquainted to your work was at this film seminar called The Flaherty, which was a really intense film experience. And they showed, I think, basically all of what you have had produced up until then.
I don't remember.
We were watching films from 9 o'clock in the morning until midnight every day, and you were one of 4 or 5 featured filmmakers. And I just remember after having seen several of your films, and they started blur a bit into each other. But I had this really intense feeling of, which I get again especially when I see Parsi, of like being constantly like pulled forward. And that's what I came out of, and what I really remembered from your films, this constant feeling of movement, and that I as a spectator had kind of been just pulled through something, and I wasn't quite sure what. I felt I was dropped down into an unexplained situation, and something just kept dragging me forward. And I remember when I came out of, I think it was actually A Human Surge, which is the feature we have not screened, and I felt that it was almost like this a suffocating feeling, actually, but in a good way. I felt that I was like there was no space for me to breathe inside of it, but at the same time you didn't tell me exactly what to look at. Yeah, that was a little bit of a long introduction, but but maybe you could talk a little bit about how you think about movement and that pull, if that resonates.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. I mean, in the first, like, to begin with, it's something that I don't think so much about. I mean, I live it. I live movement in some way, and that's why I started doing this type of films. But then, of course, I started also thinking about it and asking myself, why am I doing this type of films regarding movement also? And I don't know, as you speak, I think that for me it's a bit like a state of mind also, this thing of this feeling of constant movement and something that advances all the time, and you're not able to maybe to hold on something very firmly, and you just like try to look at everything and you absorb things, but everything like advances a little bit like time maybe, or I don't know. It's just, I don't know, I made another short that it's called That I'm Falling All the Time, in not in English, but that would be the translation. And I don't know, it comes from this feeling, this very personal feeling and very physical feeling, and also it comes from thinking about this and about this sensation of something that advances all the time, and you cannot stop, and you are not able to grasp everything, but you do what you can in this movement, in this crazy movement. And then I think I discovered by doing films that it helps me to do the type of films I want to do, and also it relates a little bit to my experience as a spectator in cinema also, because I try to share these films where you advance all the time and there's a lot of information everywhere, but depending on maybe on what you are attracted or interested in, you get this or that in this movement. So the film is not maybe being so clear in what it's showing all the time, and sometimes it's a bit confusing, or it's not very clear what the film wants to say in each moment, and it's more about you looking for things and getting what you can in this advancing constant movement. I really like that as a spectator and as a filmmaker, and I discover afterwards that different people get different things through this movement, and different people think that the film is about something or about the other thing, and I really like to receive these very different points of view as an answer to the films. And I think that constant movement helps. It's not only because of that, but it's an element that helps this sensation of something that advances and you do what you can in this crazy, like non-stopping movement.
I think it's really interesting, yeah, when you're talking about falling, because that's, even though it's like constantly like forward, it has this, it kind of, it points to something that I also think goes through all your work. It's this kind of complete disorientation that happens at certain points, and I keep grasping to some, maybe a dialogue or some narrative elements, and that you almost like you present, but then you take it away again. Some, so I kind of constantly have to shift my own position inside. And I mean, I used the word spectator earlier on, but then you say state of mind, and it's, I think maybe that's even, that describes it more. It's like I'm inside of it. It's not really like I'm looking at it. I'm really like inside, and my, the perspective shifts all the time, and my orientation kind of shifts, because you move, like Celia talked a little bit in the introduction too, like it's almost like the landscape, the people I'm watching, the camera, it's a constant shift between this, almost like a triangle, I guess, if I think about the characters in the film, the landscapes, the environment, and then the constant awareness of the camera as well, somehow. And it feels like you're jumping between these three constantly. Yeah. I don't know, suddenly it was 3. Maybe it's 5. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question, right?
It was more
but
an
I can
observation.
continue
Yeah.
that. Yeah, sorry.
But I would like to maybe like move into that that constant shift in a way, or, and also if we think of Parsi, we follow these characters, and suddenly the camera starts like shifting around like this, and then we're in the movement. So maybe I'm.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's very important also the relation between the camera and the landscape and the people or the bodies or the humans or however. And for example, we still didn't see the last one, but the last one is the first I've made, and I made it in a bit more of a classical way. So I was sort of thinking about how the bodies and the landscape adapted to the camera, and like that in that way the camera being me a little bit, so adapting the other elements to me or to my position. And then I discovered, which had some interesting results, and then like in the one in Vietnam, that's the second one we saw, we wanted to the last place we went to, it's has some relations with a place in the film you still didn't see. But I went to this place and I remembered about this scene where everything was choreographed in some way, and then the guys were doing parkour here, so I didn't want to interfere at all in what they were doing, because of many reasons. Because I really liked what they do, because I was afraid also because they were jumping in very high places, and I didn't want to tell them anything that could, I don't know, mess up everything. But for what was interesting for me, it was how I thought about this scene where that of another short that I really liked the choreography of the bodies, but in that scene I had prepared all the movements, and now I thought, okay, now it's me with the camera that has to adapt to the bodies, and they will do whatever I want, and it will be me the one that moves and looks for the scene and the movement and the frame without telling them anything. So I think these two ways of working were interesting. And then I remember that in this scene in the rooftops, while we were shooting it, I really had the desire or the idea to give them the camera, because I thought that would give something new and something different to the scene. But at the same time, we were shooting, and the camera had these balloons with it, because it had to fly away afterwards. So I couldn't do it in that moment, but I kept this idea with me. And then for the first film you saw, that's the last one I made, I discovered this 360 camera. That's a camera that where you with which you don't need to frame while you are shooting, because you can frame afterwards. and because it's like it has, this one has 2 lenses, but some of these cameras has 6 or 8 lenses, and the thing is that afterwards it produces like a sphere of image, so you sort of see everything, not everything, but you can frame everything in virtual reality. So
Just just take it a bit slow with how you actually shot it, because you gave you gave this camera to the performers, right, or to the actors.
yeah, that's where I was going. Sorry, maybe I explained the
Okay.
camera too much,
No,
but
no, it's
I wanted to
interesting.
say that thanks to this camera that you don't need to frame while you are shooting, I thought it was a good idea to give them the camera, because they don't need to be thinking about the frame while they are taking the camera. And I think it also, what I liked of this is that it brought a new idea of the relation between the camera and the people that you are seeing and the landscape, because now you really feel that it's them that they're taking the camera, and in some sense it's them that they're taking the spectators through the places. Even if then there's another moment where I framed it myself, so it's not only them, but it's them and me, and it's this relation of them and me and cinema that happened there. But I really think that in these 3 shorts we can see like different, I don't know, in this sort of similar and different ways to get to the same ideas about landscape and people and the camera and who's watching. And then I don't know, there's many things that maybe are similar in all of them, that I really like to sometimes feel that who is taking the camera and the presence of a person behind the camera, and also sometimes to be able to forget about that in some moments, or also sometimes giving the landscape a presence and not be always like so focused in the bodies and the people and the words, but also relating this landscape to the people and the movement, and how movement also, we were speaking about movement before. I really like the relation between movement, constant movement, and landscape, how it makes the space be something like it's always changing. You know, you advance through these places that are if you look at the images, like places that are changing all the time, you know, thanks to movement. And I think that's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's really interesting to know how you made these films, because what you say, like how also when you watch these films or inside of these films, you really, I really start to wonder, okay, is it you as a filmmaker? Are you there with the camera? Is it them? Are you a part of this group? Are you hanging out with these kids? Or and then you told me, for example, the 360 in Parsi, because there's one more element to the process you mentioned. So you give them the camera at 360, you get the material back, you put it in the VR glasses, and then you register, and you choose what the camera registers, right? Yeah. And then you edit.
I mean, I record what I see. So the frame that you see in the film is what I saw when I saw the images with the headset. So I recorded my movement or what I saw. So I thought that was, I mean, I could have done that in the computer. You can like animate the movement of the camera if you want, or of the frame. But I thought it was interesting for me to try and see like the connection with the body, and to have more organic movements, and also have the logic of my of the view of a person, you know, like watching that, and of myself revisiting that, because I was there with them, but while they were shooting I was not there, because I didn't want to be a part of the image. So we thought about some things together, but then they left, they shot, and they came back, and then they told me what happened. And related to that, I thought if we should do it again, or if we should change something or not. I really like also something in cinema about communication, right? And not being myself always like controlling everything, but also trusting what they tell me, and trying to see what I understand of what they tell me, and what they understand of what I tell them, and all of these things. So then I was listening to the poem while I was re-watching the images, so that also influenced on the rhythm of my movement, and also I think in the logic of my movement. And also I think it was very interesting because when I was there, of course you are in the real place, you are surrounded by everything, have many possible stimulations or distractions or many things. But then I was in a very different situation. I was alone in an apartment in a very different city, visiting these places, but also in a virtual way. So it's very like you're there and you're not there at all. So I really like this. And also I really like that for some scenes I planned the movement because I really wanted like maybe to connect like a hand with a tree, with the face of someone. So I had to rehearse a little bit, and the movement was something that I had to practice a lot. But also for other shots, like the ones where they are rollerblading, I just saw it once, and I really wanted to keep what I see, where I looked at in this first time I saw it. I thought it was nice to have the different ways of watching the scenes, like more calculated one and more like, okay, I mean, I'm seeing this very long shot just once, and that's what we have.
No, I think it's really interesting how these different layers of realities in a way, and that you actually you have the remembrance because you were there, or the memory, but the material you get is actually through this is one step removed in a way from the reality, and I feel like that's also, and I was thinking about the title, no, not the title, but the it seems like parece que, which Parsi means in Creole, right?
Yeah.
And also that, because I was trying to think about your titles because it's so mysterious in a way, and it was like this. It seems like it's, and so it's like this almost reality, but it's not, and that's interesting. Like push and pull between. You're in that constant like shifting situation in a way, state of mind. Anyway, that's not a question. That was more a comment. But I want to go back to what the lack of control. And I think that's also interesting in your methods and how you work with the people that you involve, and also, we talked a little bit about how you develop the scripts in a way, or the holes in the scripts. You talked about the holes, so maybe you could talk a bit about that.
I was thinking only one thing about the virtual thing. That and the reality, that also I think it relates a lot even with the films that I did, with the other films that don't involve like virtual reality in that sense. But like for me, I spend a lot of time in the computer, as many people do nowadays, I think. And so I sort of discover the world in some way with the computer and with my brain more than with my body. But then I really like traveling to places I don't know, and I don't know from before, and I don't research before. So I really like discovering the place with my body and with the people I meet, and everything like much more attached to the body and the body experience. And I really like this connection, and I think it relates a little bit with what I've done in the last one of the virtual reality thing and that. But I think in the other ones it's also present in this way, because many things that I think I want to do, I think them in this sort of virtual life of being on the internet all the time. And then when I'm there, it's very different. And of course, many things change, but there's like this relation between these two worlds that I find interesting. And then what was the new...
now you made me think about to follow, to go down this line.
How I work, maybe? Or
no, but this is really interesting. Also, I'm thinking about the end of I Forgot, which we haven't talked about, but which really relates to this.
That's true.
Is where, so again, like, where is the camera? Who carries the camera? Where is... and we even see one of the guys suddenly having a camera. Yeah. But then the image just
floats away.
Yeah, floats away on a balloon. No, it's not a drone. It's a balloon that just
4 balloons
and shifts our perspective completely again.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, I think I'm also very interested in like points of view, and also in that's a very big thing in many ways, but also in some very simple ways, or to show how if you can physically change of point of view, and that changes a lot what you see in the image and what you think about it and what you think about a situation or what you realize about a situation. I mean, for this short, for me, it was an important part of the structure was thinking the short will begin like under the sea and then pass through the level of the city or the life that we are most of the time in, and then it will go up. So I think this movement was something that helped me to structure the film. I understand in some way what I wanted to do, and I wanted a little bit to share this thing of like all these sort of parallel worlds that are together and very simple in a way, but also very different. And I don't know, like being under the sea is very strange, and at the same time, it's just like going under the water, which should be very simple, but at the same time, when you are there, you feel in another planet in some way, and I really like the physical connection between these places, and feel that's very simple and very complex at the same time. And I feel the same thing about the end and the blowing away. And I really like to end the short like letting the camera be taken by the wind, which I found as a, I don't know. I really also like sometimes to try and do images I would really like to see, and I'm very excited because I don't know what will happen. I think that's something interesting, and I think that ends in the film in this sensation of not knowing what will happen and being excited of what could happen, but you don't understand exactly what is happening. And really, I thought this was interesting about these guys just jumping and appropriating this space and using it in their own way. This space that is a bit mysterious because it's like in construction but abandoned, but it's like in the middle of something and you don't understand why. And then they jump, and finally, I thought some of the energy they have makes the camera like blow away in some way. And I really like how you change from a very everyday situation between like normal conversations to like be blown away, and suddenly you are seeing like a map, but you are still with their presence, with the sound, so you are still there but here, and you don't understand if they are conscious about what happened with the camera or not, because some dialogues seem like they are speaking about the camera, like
Hold the machine.
yeah, they say some things like that. I'm not sure if they were really speaking about the camera or not, but I really like that. And I don't know, I really like this sort of connection and disconnection that also relates a little bit to this sensation of reality and virtual or fantasy, that always everything is very normal and very strange at the same time. And I think that with cinema, I believe I can share this way of experiencing life.
Yeah, we can continue on this, so we can actually. I want to follow up on another thing when you talk about these transitions, and I'm also thinking about these seamless kind of transitions from one environment to another constantly that I feel happening in all your works, and also very much in The Human Search, where we even move from Buenos Aires to Mozambique and then to the Philippines. And here also these films that we are seeing today are from 3 very different parts of the world. So I'm also thinking about, or I want to hear how you think about these different geographies or different localities, and how you also as a filmmaker move seemingly seamlessly almost through the one side to the other. Like how do you go about that? How do you think about it? How do you even choose a place? And how do you enter it?
There are many reasons. In one way, there's a reason for choosing the places. That's I generally choose countries or cities that I don't know much about, mainly because they are cities that in Argentina, and I think it doesn't happen only in Argentina. It's something that happens a lot. We always look at the same countries, mainly the richest ones. Or the European or North America. So we are always like looking at them and trying to compare ourselves with them and trying to always like looking at what happens there. But then all the other countries in general we don't care much about, or we only know if they are poor or rich, or I don't know if there's a war there or what. But I that's very simple. But I really like to go there, and also to put them in relation with one another, because I mean, here with the films we saw, I think the only one, maybe the first one, that's like the Argentinian poem, that's very Argentinian in many ways, with Guinea-Bissau, with Bissau, that's the capital, and at the beginning you would think that the relation is very difficult or not so obvious, but then I really like to see how they relate and then don't relate, and how sometimes they are very together and sometimes they are very different, and I really like to try to create these relations that I don't see so often. I think that is interesting also. Also, at the same time, I never say where we are in a clear way, like with a text or something, like or someone saying it. Also because I really like this sensation of discovering the place as you go along, and like letting yourself be carried and exploring with not having so many pre
preconceived
preconceptions.
ideas.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting, because I think that's a better way to go somewhere. And I think when we know the name of a country, generally we have some ideas of that country. So I prefer like, and also because I really don't like the idea that some films sometimes carry, or some people see in some films, of believing that a film portrays a city or a country, because of course I couldn't do that, especially if there are places I never went before. That's not my intention at all, but more of showing like what we share, or what happened in this experience, right? And also, I don't know, I think there's a lot of documenting places in some way, that sometimes it's more clear or not, but I think I really like to shoot in like public space, and to shoot in places where people are doing their normal thing, and not everything is prepared for the film. I think that is very rich thing to see and to register, like normal life in cities. And what else?
How do you go about, for example, if we think about Parsi, you're like, okay, you want to make a film from Guinea-Bissau.
Yeah.
And how did you go about? How did you meet the people you work with there? Like, how do you work with them in that space?
Yeah, so Parsi began with an Argentinian poet I know for a very long time, that proposed me to do a film with his poem, and I thought it was interesting because I really like what he does, and I relate a lot with what he does, and because of many other reasons. But then I met in the same seminar where we met. I met a director from Guinea-Bissau that's called Sana Nanada. And we talked. I showed a film there in Mozambique and another one in Sierra Leone, and he talked about Guinea-Bissau, and he told me you should come, and that's the first time I thought about going. Then on the internet I found an interview to a group of people, of LGBTQ plus people from Guinea-Bissau, that talk about their lives and how it's legal to be gay or any LGBTQ plus person in that country, but not in the countries around it. So it talked a little bit about that, about their work, and about how they organize the only like event that called Miss Gay. That's a sort of competition, but I think the important thing is that the only open event where they can talk up and show who they are in many ways. And I thought it was interesting because I didn't know much about it, and I think we don't, at least in the places where I am, we don't speak so much about it, or when we speak we only say, oh yeah, it's complicated, or very sort of those things. But I really wanted to share and to learn and to share with them my experience as an Argentinian LGBTQ person, and I thought that was interesting. And this relation also, the poem has a lot of very specific gay Argentinian words and expressions, so I thought it was fun to put them together with that. So I went and looked for this group of people, and once I was there, then of course, as always, that when I go to a new place I start discovering things and I start thinking new things, because the place and the people bring me new ideas, luckily. That's why I go also. So then I started seeing people in rollerblades, and I thought that as the poem is really long and repetitive, and it's great, but also it can be very heavy, and in moments it can be maybe unbearable and all of that, which I really like. I thought, in my opinion, the poem is like heavier and heavier each time as time passes. So I thought it would be interesting that the movement is like lighter and lighter. And so we start walking, and then I wanted to finish like rollerblading. Like I feel that movement feels a lot like floating in some way, and feels lighter than walking. And in the middle, running could be like a middle between that. So I looked for a group of girls that run as a sport, and we found these girls that play football, and that I talk about other girls they like, and I thought that was very interesting also, and this group of boys that rollerblade. And then how we work, I don't know, I just explain them what I want, which is not always very clear, but not clear to me either. So I try to share in the best way I can what I want with words, but many of the things I want to do, I cannot explain them with words very well, or maybe I don't know yet, because I also, once I meet the people I'm working with, then I have more ideas. But I try to explain as best as I can, which is quite simple, like this poem and the different places. I wanted to go to different places of the city and all of that, but it's quite simple. And then we talk about anything also, just like whatever, and we walk together. And for me, the important thing is to try to spend time together. So I try to spend as much time as we can together. Of course, I'm there for this film, so I have all the time for this film, and they are there doing their normal life, so they don't have all the time for the film, which is okay, and it's normal. So I try to adapt to them, but I think it's important to spend time together. I discovered also in the other films, maybe also, that even if I feel I cannot explain the film very well to them, after doing the film, I realized that we understood ourselves in other ways, maybe because in some films they improvise a lot, and I discovered that what they say relates a lot with the film. And I don't know, I believe that, I don't know, it's interesting to see how the only way in which we are communicating is not for what I say or what they say, but also time together, like, puts other ways of communication in there, which I think it's interesting. And for the short in Vietnam, for example, the one you saw first or second, I don't know, second.
Second.
I didn't know Vietnamese and I didn't know Vietnam, so I started adding people on Facebook. I put Hanoi on Facebook, and I started adding people randomly. I was using Google Translator. I tried to explain that I was going to Hanoi to do a film and all of that. And then when I arrived the first day, there was one of the people I spoke to that wanted to go for a beer and spoke English, so that was useful. And we went, and he was really nice, and he wanted to show us parts of the city where he hangs out with his friends, and we met his friends. And that was very amazing in many ways. Like, he also had a bar in the streets, a tea bar, so we also shot there. And I know, being with him, I started thinking of which of the ideas that I thought about I can do here and which I can't, and having new ideas. And also, some of the scenes there were totally improvised, and some were totally written, and some were like improvised, but I asked them to say like this or that word or phrase. So I put one or two phrases in the middle of whatever they wanted to say, to see how this like sort of disbalanced or took the balance away of, or the normal flow of their conversation away in some way. Like, I put strange phrases in their improvisation. And then, but yeah, I mean, that's a little bit how we work. Then I met other. I wanted not to be close in one group of friends, so I met other people in the streets, and we tried to do a casting, but it didn't work. I mean, we went to the streets with papers in Vietnamese and gave them to many people, but no one came. But I mean, I tried many things, like. Afterwards, in a film we are not seeing today, but shot in Mozambique, we did the same sort of technique for casting, and we stuck papers in the bus stops and in the parks, and we gave papers to the people in the streets, and 400 people came, which was much more than what we were expecting. So in general, I try like many things, and in some places, some things are more effective than others. But then I think the most important thing is that like trying to spend time together and trying to, I don't know, to think together in some way. I mean, I think in my way of the film director way, and they don't think in the same way, but they also are thinking with me in their own way, I think.
It seems like when we watch your films that it really is an experience in a way, and that you're letting me into that experience, and it feels very collaborative in the form. So that makes sense. Hmm. I was just wondering if we should maybe open up for a few questions so we get to show the last film as well. Anybody who has some thoughts, reflections, questions? Yeah.
Yes, I was paying them. Not that, not so much. I mean, I always would like to pay more. I mean, I paid them as much as I could, and I wasn't being paid in the moment. So I tried, but I say this because I think the relation is important in between. If I would be earning a lot of money and they won't, it would be strange. But yeah, of course, I'm paying them. I think sometimes, well, in the short you will see next. I didn't pay, but because it was in Argentina and it was the short I made when I was in university, so I worked a lot of time and then I only had money for transport and food. And I think you can do that when you are working with friends in your own country, but not all your life, but at the beginning. But I think when you are going to other countries, I don't know, I don't feel you can do that. Maybe some, I don't know, maybe some people do it and they can explain why or how. But for me, I don't know, also you represent something else when you are in a different country. And also it's just because it's fair, of course, but I think it wouldn't work also, and it wouldn't be okay. But yeah, I mean, it's always something. I don't know. The first film I made in another country other than Argentina was in Sierra Leone. We are not showing it here now, but I was studying in France, so I had a budget, but it wasn't that much for that trip. So, but at the same time, in some countries there are not so many film students, so there's a lot of this or the only people that go there are like big companies or big, I don't know, commercials. Um, so yeah, I think sometimes this generates different. I don't know. You have to explain, and it generates a lot of things. And I think it's interesting also to pass through that and to learn to learn what you represent for the other. And maybe for me, I was like a student, a small student in a school somewhere. But for others, maybe I was just a white guy arriving from whoever knows where, and I don't know, and I don't know, but yeah, of course, I pay, and I would like to pay more each time, and I try to do that. But yeah, I don't think I don't know how could I do that without paying, but yeah, no. Yeah, of course, totally. No, I'm trying to tell you things about related to paying and not paying because I think it's interesting also, not only because you have to pay and all of that, but also because of what it generates and all the dynamics that surround money that are everywhere, and also when you do films, of course. And yeah, I think it's something. I don't know. It's something interesting. yeah. I think, I mean, I don't. I think that would be would be interesting to ask them that and to see what they think. I don't ask them that directly in that way. I think that no one feels exactly themselves when they are in front of a camera. I believe, but of course, they all at the same time they are. Well, sometimes, like in the first short you saw, they were we were thinking about where to go and where to walk through or what to do, but they were not given dialogue, so they could say whatever they wanted. So that relates a little bit more with being yourself. Mm, but I think it's always in the middle. In my opinion, it's always in the middle. It's not exactly being yourself, and they are not exactly doing their normal life. It's not that I'm just there and they are cooking, and taking a shower, um, or working or whatever they do in their normal lives. But also, they are not really acting. They are not like, I'm not telling them to cry and then to hug and give each self a kiss, very classical things of acting. So in my opinion, it's in the middle. But then, of course, it depends on each person. No, some people maybe see it more like, okay, I got a very easy job that is like running with a camera for 1 hour and then they pay me and that's all. And for others, it's like, wow, making a film. And maybe they are more curious about how we do it, or more curious about the result, or more curious about what is this, or who are you. But I think that depends a lot on each person. In the films I made, in some, maybe one of the actors afterwards started studying like film edition or doing films, and others maybe other things. And I mean, another one I remember that asked me to see the short like 3 years after, because he thought that maybe now he would think in a different thing about it, because I don't know, he changed in his life and he wanted to see what he thought about the short now. And I think that's, for me, it's interesting to see how each person, and to trust in each person that they take it as they want, and as their personality relates in different ways. I don't know. Maybe for some it's a job, for some it's an experience, for some it's other things.
It sounds like a. Oh, I didn't see you. Okay, sorry. But, um, it's super important what actually happens on the spot there, and on the what you're saying. This kind of spending time with people, and the almost like the material is kind of woven after that. And I'm just curious, like how much, because you mentioned in several of the times you also do some kind of advanced research of some kind, check what is available there or whatever, but then you're open to what's happening on the spot. So I'm just curious about that relationship with that. Do you find sometimes that like the more you know about the place, the more you're kind of tied into some idea that it's hard to move on from, or is it good? I mean, I'm just wondering about that relationship between that.
No, I don't do research before going.
Okay.
Sometimes, like in Guinea-Bissau, I looked for these people, so that was like the small research I did. But what I do in general is write, but a thing that I would like, but it's very general and could be anywhere. So I write sort of the fictional part, especially in the one in Vietnam. In the other one, I didn't write anything, but I had the poem. But yeah, I don't research much, because I mean, I do a very basic research of if I have to do something before going, safety things, or where I'm going to live, or contacting one person in the place or something. But I really like to discover the place with my body and with my presence and with what people tell me of their place. I mean, because think I'm very used, and that's something normal. We are very used to being on the internet and having so much information about some things that sometimes could be useful information and sometimes could be, I don't know, information that is related to very different interests or points of view, or all of that. And I really like to have another way of approaching information and approaching a place and people, that's just being there and trusting in the people you find and what they say about their place and their lives. And I really want that. And in my opinion, I would think that if I would know a lot, I would go with a lot of preconceived ideas. So that's why I don't want to do it. And I don't know. In my experience, I found people that were so interesting to talk to about their history, about the place where they are, about their normal lives. And I think that it's very nice for me to have these two moments of a very physical experience in the place and sort of a virtual one, but that doesn't relate exactly to that place. And then there's a lot of relations between these. You know, when I write things that are more fictional, but when I arrive, also this can change. There are many things that I wrote that I discover I can't do there, or I don't feel like wanna do there. And then when we talk, there's new ideas that come from these talks that I put in the script. So everything is like relating. Or I go to a place and I say, okay, this scene that I wrote that I didn't know if where to put it in this place, it's great and it can go in this part of the film. So I like to think the film also with my presence in the place.
Should we take the one last? Yeah.
No, I think that it's interesting how you described what I say with words I didn't say, but I don't. I mean, because I didn't say exotic or far away or remote, but it's not bad. I mean, maybe you said this because you are used to listening to this. I don't know, but I say I go to places I don't know much about, but they are not far away. Like, I mean, they are far away from me, but they are close to other things. I mean, this description of these places as remote is very centered in where we are now. And I don't like this, like, being very centered always in the same in the same place. So I don't think they are remote places or exotic or all of that. I don't go with this idea, and I don't have this idea. I go to these places because, as I don't know much about them, I want, and I think we, in the places where I show my films, we don't know much about them in general. Not, of course, there might be people that know a lot about those places. But I want to share a little bit about these places, more in the image and in the landscape and in a cinematic way. No, it's not information that I'm giving. It's not like I'm not a journalist. But I don't know. And then there are many other reasons. Of course, there are personal reasons. But I think what is interesting for me is to put these places in relation to me as an Argentinian. Of course, I mean, being Argentine, also some things I learned when I was there, that for some people that I look like a European, but I'm not. So sometimes when they meet me, they think I'm European, and all of the things that come with that for them. And then they discover I'm not, but also I look like one. So are you or you're not? Or also I'm from a country they don't know anything about in general. Not all of them, of course. Some people I met knew a lot about Argentina also, but it's a country that is not very famous, or they don't have many ideas about, as I don't have so many ideas about their country. So in that sense, we relate, I think, in some way. But yeah, I don't know. For me, it was also important to learn a lot about this. As I was saying before, a little bit what I represent for the others, and even if I don't believe I am something, I represent that for the other, and how do I relate with that, and how do I work with that, doing a film and doing a work together. That's also interesting. And I don't know, I think it's, for me, I understand what you say about some films that I also see sometimes, and I think, and I have also this sensation of people going there and just observing everything as, oh, look at this. I don't know how to explain it in words, but this thing that you were saying of exoticizing and oh, I'm in a remote place, you know. I don't like when I see that, but I really don't feel that way. Of course, I don't know. I'm open to points of view, and I'm very open always to every type of critic, because I mean, I never still received this type of critic, but I'm open to learning, and I'm not like putting myself in a place of saying, no, I don't do that, you know. Of course, I don't think that, but it's always interesting to question yourself and to see how, in which way you could be doing something you don't support, with many ideas in life. So I think that's very interesting, always not to be so sure of you not doing something, you know, and also be always in a process of learning. But I think for me, it's always very important, I don't know, to try and in my very small, on the small power that gives you have a small budget to do something, for example, no, that before I didn't have. What can I do? And I think creating relations between different people of countries that are not so used to be related, I think that's important for me, and that's interesting, and I like to share that with people in different places. And yeah, I don't know, I could talk more about it, but that does answer in some way your question or not? Or you can tell me something more if you want, really. I don't know, and I think there's a lot of reasons also. I don't know. I don't want to make it so long, but yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a really interesting point, but I think also like really like thinking about how you work and how you keep shifting these positions. And I don't feel like the people on the screen necessarily is like an object, you know, for a documentarian gaze. Somehow I feel like you're doing something more complicated with the relation of the subject and the object, and I feel you almost like dissolve it, which, yeah, I mean, I think it's important to keep this like ethical question in mind when traveling, but it's almost like these transitions from this one side to the other, and also like one culture. I mean, I'm go back to Human Search, which people here not necessarily haven't seen, but where you move through the screen from a group of queer kids in Buenos Aires, and suddenly you're in Maputo, no? And it's almost like the same crowd. Sorry, I just had to throw it in.
No, yeah, thank you. No, and I also think, I don't know, there's some places and some, oh, maybe also in Argentina, there are some places where all the films that are made there are speaking about like the social situation, which is also interesting. But sometimes if it's the only thing you can do in a place, it's a bit like flattening. And I really like to do things that are also about other things that relate to the place and also relate to the specific people that are working in the film, and not, I mean, they represent, we all represent our cities in some way, but also ourselves in an individual way. But I also feel that when I do films in general, even being in any place, I always like to feel like myself, and also the camera, and also the point of view of the film, like being in the middle of what's happening. I think that's interesting for me, and I tried to do it in Argentina also, but I think that also relates to this thing of going to a place and looking from the outside, or also not denying I am a stranger coming from the outside, of course. But I think the point where you put the point of view sometimes changes how the film relates to the people and the places.
Thank you so much on that, and it's 10 o'clock, so we should probably show Pude Puma. Do you want to say a few words for the film?
That? Yeah, I mean, it's one of the first shorts I made. It's one that's more written. I don't want to say many things about it, but I think it relates in an interesting way to the ones you saw before, and that may be interesting as you are watching them in a group in some way. what else can I say? I don't know. It's shot in a very different way. The structure and the writing and the yeah. For this one is the only one that everything is written, and the structure is a bit more classical maybe, and I don't know if the film is more classical or not, but it's a different way of working, and I think the same way it relates a lot with the films you already saw. But well, I hope you. I don't know. I don't know what I hope, but
Thank you so much. It's 23 minutes long, right?
17.
17, so sorry. Yeah, 17. Enjoy, and thank you.